everyone again.
Hi.
Again.
Some of you are very familiar faces. Some of you aren't.
Some are new.
But hi, I'm Nella. Welcome to panel number 3, the All That and a Bag of Chips panel, where I pretty much talked about everything, so let's talk about everything again and a bag of chips. So...
They're empty.
Do you want a bag of chips?
No, I'm good. We've discussed how I became a part of the website, how we we didn't really touch on how we started Shay Apocalypse, so if we wanted to discuss that, that's cool. And we discussed the book Awoken and how it came to be and what future plans are and how angry Tiger's Curse makes me. But we can retouch on any of those subjects. Anything else? It's a really easy peasy.
I was a bit interested in the Shay Apocalypse story because you're already sort of integrated with the one site and you told me that you were looking for a slightly more mature audience, but was there any other sort of factors of what you could do with your own site or what the goals were?
Well, one of the things we've always personally I feel struggled with Channel Awesome is we're not really the screaming jokey people. Like, we make jokes, I think we can be hilarious, but opinions may vary. But we tend to be a little more sedate while still being ridiculous. We're a different flavor of that, like, we make fun of ourselves and of things, but we tend to have a more academic approach.
Yeah, I've always appreciated that.
And because that's what interests us. We went to college. I'm an anthropologist. Lindsay studied film theory. So she and I, that's how we just view things. That's just how we discuss them when we're watching things on our own. And it's just easier when you have a web series to write what you know or what you're interested in. That's why Kyle, who's a part of our site, you might know him as Owen Citizen, is so good at Brows Held High, because that's like highbrow, like auteur stuff that he talks about, and like he has like an encyclopedic knowledge of art house film, and he just like pulls that information up like faster than Google, and you're just like, how? So we're really glad to have him on the site because he brings that element too. But so there came a point where we were on Channel Awesome and we were just feeling like we were getting a little lost in, because there's so many producers on Channel Awesome, and they all have their own thing, and it's great, but the organization of the site is a little iffy, and we were just feeling like we were getting lost. And what we really wanted to do was create a space where we felt more comfortable creating new ideas, instead of just having to go to the site and be like, hey, can we get another tab in this ocean of tabs and like the scroll down section that no one will ever find. So that's how it started, and we had looked at ads or at web space and stuff like that, and that money starts adding up. But Blip actually, from what I understand, Blip approached Lindsay, and our videos are hosted on Blip, and Lindsay's cultivated a really good relationship with them because their offices are in Manhattan, and so therefore I would be at work, but she'd go to their like open office happy hour at like 5 on Fridays and like really get to know the guys there and like find out, well, what are you looking for from us, and have that conversation, which was entirely like straight up. I'm gonna tell you right now, if you are in any way interested in pursuing any kind of creative anything, be it writing, be it web production, networking is so important. Just being able to like go to these get-togethers and just be able to talk, and not so much to be able to because you want to be able to have what we call the elevator pitch for yourself and what you do, but don't push it. Like, you have to find the line between actually getting to know the people there and showing interest, and then being able to describe what your spiel is about. But you don't go in with hi, I'm Nella, I'm from Shay Apocalypse, this is everything we do, isn't that awesome? You should totally follow us. Very off-putting when you do that. Anyway, that's a digression. Life advice from Nella. So she was talking to them, and she had mentioned her plans to start a new website, and they were actually instrumental in creating the code to create a website that we felt was simple enough that you could very easily navigate it and find the person you're looking for and watch their video. So they helped us organize it, and we started looking for people to join us. And we kind of wanted to find people who weren't on Channel Awesome, who had either tried or were trying to do their own thing. And people are, the things we were looking for were people with good content and people who had good production value. And that doesn't mean, you have all the really fancy equipment, but you have decent equipment and you know how to use it. Like, your sound is solid, your editing is sharp, your video quality, even if the camera's not looking good, you at least have you bought a couple of light bulbs from Home Depot and you threw some wax paper in front of them, and you're not in grainy shadow. Like, that was really important to us. And we actually ended up meeting these really fantastic people, like Jamie, who does Jamie does Needs More Gay, an absolutely hilarious series I highly recommend because he is precious, and he's so funny. We found Dan O, who does Folding Ideas, and he's the one with the puppet, and he does some really high thought film theory. Although I highly recommend his video about Sam Witwicky and about how Hollywood, or how we as audiences have accepted useless male protagonists because he's so useless. He has no redeeming qualities. He does nothing. He is a MacGuffin in and of himself, and he has a really great breakdown about why that's a problem.
Was he also going to do this one on the Man of Steel one?
And also he has a fantastic one about Man of Steel, and how we as audiences have pretty much accepted this idea that all governments are terrible, and we need just give all the power to one person to protect us. And he takes on, Iron Man and all those movies as well, but it's definitely focused on Man of Steel as the culmination of where these movies have taken us. So he's and he's a pleasure to watch. And also we've got the puppet that's really cute. And then there's Samarsa Ursa, who her name's Jill. She's actually across the pond, and she does this really lovely series about just things you like. It's so positive. It's just, here's this thing I like, and let's look at the history of it and what it's about and why it's been so popular. I really like the one she actually did about Breakfast at Tiffany's, the movie, because it was just a very lovely breakdown of what the movie is and why we find it so appealing and what's so beautiful about it, but what's also very, makes you step back and think for a moment about it. And it was a really lovely little review. And, then we have Kyle Browsett High, we have Todd in the Shadows, who does pop music reviews. He's hilarious. And Paul, who does his music and movies. So he does the music movie series. And then Lisa, who's our maven of the Eventide, and also another one of our.
What is Eventide?
What?
What is Eventide?
Oh, the even of the even.
Oh, okay. That's what I figured, but I didn't. Could be more
which
clever
is
than that.
vampire reviews, and you'd be surprised how much material she has to cull on.
So
I'm always surprised.
You recruited these people off YouTube, or?
Some were from YouTube. Actually, pretty much. Aside from Kyle, Paul, and Kenny, or Todd, sorry, Todd in the Shadows. Those were all Channel Awesome people, but the others were all people Lindsay had found on YouTube and was like, you gotta check out this person's stuff. Like, they're exactly what we want for our website. Because they were funny, they weren't offensive, and they were informative. They had good heads on their shoulders, they're a pleasure to work with, and their content is really great. So, and that was, really wanted to sort of build that and move a little bit more towards the education side of edumacation. Is that the word?
Edutainment.
Edumacatement.
It's not Fox
that
News.
Word, yeah. And we wanted to move more towards a little more of a education side of it, while still being entertaining, still being something. Hey, I've got and also another big thing we wanted to focus on was people who were doing what they could who had short episodes, or at least if they had longer episodes, it was solid content, Because one of the things we found with internet audiences is that it's like puppies. It's like, look, thing, squirrel. You know, it's very much like that. And trying to hold an audience's attention with your content, you want it to be really tight. You want to make your point, and you don't want too much filler. You want to always trying to cut for the 10-minute and below mark rather than longer than that. So, and we started cultivating it that way. I can talk about how we came up with the name J Apocalypse if anyone's interested.
Where does the name come from?
Okay, the name, so
House of the Apocalypse.
way back in like college age time, I mean, Lindsay and I have kind of been kicking around this like production company name thing for a while. And to begin with, it was her and our friend Sherry came up with calling it Border Patrol. Like, and this was on one of the like their long drives or whatever in California, and they were like talking about like Border Patrol's cops and like, you know, it's trouble when like you can see them like lifting their belts as they're walking with the car, like, oh no, this is bad. So there was an idea of calling it Border Patrol for a while, but we decided that was a bad name. Then we discussed using mouse water for a while because when Lindsay and I were roommates together, she had a snake named Grendel. And snakes require you to feed them mice. It's just the nature of the beast. And this snake was okay with frozen mice, but the thing about frozen mice is that they have to be unfrozen. They have to be unfrozen in a way that is pleasant to the mouse. So that means she had a pot, and it was only used for this, a small little pot that she put water in, mouse in it, put it on low heat until it was defrosted. Except she would leave the water on the stove for like days afterward. She would just forget about it. And as her roommate, I just would look at it like it was the most disgusting thing in the world. And like, I never said anything while we were living together. And then years later, you know, we're out at a bar, we're drinking, we're talking about like terrible roommates, and like she's making fun of me, like, and I'm just enraged. I go, mouse water! And it all came out about how upsetting it was, like with this mouse water she'd leave on the stove. And so then we thought about mouse water for a while as a production name, because it's, you know, it's catchy. People will like, what's the story behind that? And that's always a story you can tell. Well, we went with J Apocalypse instead, though. It was a name we came up with. Lindsay and two other friends of ours, they all lived in an apartment together uptown on 96th Street, and they kept trying to lure me in to live with them, to bring the rent down. I was happy where I was. It would have been too many people in that apartment, and so what I would joke was that, well, we can't all live together because then the four horsemen will combine and then the apocalypse will happen. So we started referring to the apartment as J Apocalypse. And it sort of carried on with it. Like, after they moved in that apartment, they moved up to Washington Heights, and with everyone in the apartment again, it was like, okay, well, it became J Apocalypse again. It's a name that is just sort of carried to whatever place where three or more of us live together. And we realized that was such a solid name for us because, you know, it's just fun, and it's personal to us. And it has that feeling of like a family coming together and causing massive amounts of grief, like, which I think is a good shtick to have for a website. So that's how we came up with the name.
Could you just pause for 1 second? I kind of screwed up the camera here. I need to put in another different card.
Oh, no
so
problem.
talk in quiet.
Okay.
We're good.
Yeah.
How many people do you have doing videos on the site now?
Hang on, quick count. So Lindsay, Lisa, Paul, Penny, Kyle, Jill, Dano, Jamie. Right now we have 8 people, and I hope I'm not forgetting someone, but I'm pretty sure it's only 8 people.
And is there like a goal number, or are you just gonna?
Not really, but we haven't really discussed expanding it all right now. We're really happy with who we have. I know if we could, we'd love to get Andre the Black Nerd, because he is just delightful, and I really like his content, but he's kind of a big deal on YouTube, so he'd be doing us a favor, really.
So
yeah.
I saw that, now I know that you're Lindsay's little partner, but have you ever thought of, let's say, maybe doing some quick stuff that maybe doesn't require a lot of editing, or just sort of like vloggy things? Because you don't have a section there, and I don't usually see. I mean, I'd love to see more of your own stuff, just because I think you'd probably come up with something interesting and creative.
Yeah. I know, like, because when you come up with content, it has to be something you're interested in and you can talk about. And I know if I was gonna do one, I was actually thinking of doing one where it's just tiny histories of New York, like, and going to various street corners where something happened. Because I know a lot of those little details.
Do you know the website Forgotten New York?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I know that guy. So.
Yeah, yeah.
He's in the city history section.
No,
So.
yeah. I mean, like right down to going. There's a street called John Street in the financial district where, before the Boston Massacre, there was the Battle of Golden Hill, which was like this big fight that almost happened but didn't. But it sort of got people riled up enough about British aggression that it led to. It sort of was on the tip of everyone's tongue when the Boston Massacre happened. So, but that happened. It was like a bunch of guys on one side of the street. The British showed up and they went, "Oh no, fuck this shit," and ran away. Like, so, but it was the Battle of Golden Hill. It was a big deal.
There's the secret subway entrance, the one that's disguised as an apartment building.
Oh yeah.
Well, there's a lot of those.
There's only one Grecian lift entrance. The one that's secret. It's
The really ornate one.
No, it's there was a row of old houses. I forget what it's called. There's a row of old houses, and they're protected by the city.
Yeah.
But the subway was like, we need an emergency exit here and an access port, and so they like compromised. And there's just it's like
Oh, the facade.
row house with blacked out windows that's slightly shorter than all of the other ones, and a policeman standing at the door. Row house. And that one, if you listen very closely, you can hear the subway wishing by.
There was I think that was publicized recently. There's another one. I'll actually tell you where it is. You know the Letterman Theater?
Yeah.
Okay, you go around the corner. There's a Hello Deli. You keep walking down the street on that side, and you'll see this odd house with like windows that are grates. That's a subway substation.
Okay.
That is also built in a row house
I know
form.
in like Brooklyn there's a couple. Like actually, Scouting New York is a great blog. He's a movie location scout, and he just really digs history. And he finds some beautiful corners in New York. Definitely highly recommend checking out his blog. His pictures are amazing. The history he finds out about them is really spectacular. Like, highly recommend Scouting New York. So we started the website, and we have like 8 people on it now. And but really, I know it's a dual partnership, but my biggest contribution to the site is now the 50 Shades of Green series. So, that's sort of my series, and Lindsay's with it in me. So.
But it's really
with
great.
Me in it. That sentence. No. Oh, that was a terrible sentence.
I love how you have the theme drink thing going on.
Yeah, I mean that was just for our own fun
And tax write-off, I know.
and tax write-off. It totally counts. And we wanted to this series. We wanted to start more like as we get the books, like trying to find or concoct cocktails that are inspired by the books that we read now. I think that could be fun. But.
Some people have suggested I'm not sure if this may or may not work, depends if how you can talk about it, but some people suggest like a beer or an alcoholic drink related review segment.
I've known a lot of people who have done that.
I think it can be tough if you because I think that the problem is if you aren't like a real snob on that, each review sounds the same because you just say it's woody and has floral undertone.
And also that sci-fi guy Leo, he does a beer review series it's really good. And, I really like beer, and I love the nuance of cocktails and stuff. But honestly, I'm sticking to. I have a Tumblr called Lady Bastion, which So I have a friend, Hillary, who her thing is she's like, no, shower beer is the greatest. When you've had a bad day, you get in the shower, a nice hot shower, and you take a nice beer with you. But I'm like, no, not a shower. No, you make a cocktail and you get a bubble bath, and you sit in the bubble bath and you drink your cocktail. And we've had this heated discussion about which one's better. So she has a Tumblr blog called Captain Shower Beer, and I have Lady Bastion. So now we're sister blogs.
How many Tumblrs do you have?
Just 2.
Just 2. Wow,
Yeah.
that's so self-control. I can't can't do it.
I had way more live journals. The thing that I don't like about Tumblr is that it's very difficult to find out when you posted things, to like backtrack on that.
When you yourself posted?
Yeah.
You can always put the date
or it
in.
like shows up like in a queue. It's like.
Put the date in the title of your post.
Yeah. You know?
Oh.
I mean,
or even like if I find other friends' posts, like I find it very difficult to find out when they posted it. I feel like Tumblr lives in this strange, like timeless era where like things can just reappear after months.
They
you know?
can, but if you click on the original post, it'll give you a date. If the blog's still around. My problem is when people delete blogs, links break.
Yeah.
Or when they change their URL, links break.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're like, I wanted to see what the original post said, but
And
I
I just
suppose they changed their URL for Halloween and never changed back, so.
And honestly, when compared to like what I remember from LiveJournal and just how I interact on Twitter, I don't find Tumblr very useful for carrying on conversations, because you have to really carry on the conversation, you kind of have to reblog, and then you're just gunking up your entire.
I found ways around it.
Yeah,
it's,
but
yeah, you're right. It's not
where
like
you want people to see your conversation, but like comment system are great, and you could just like click and scroll down, and I miss that. I think it's highly amusing. I like all the GIFs. It's definitely not the social media. I'd rather stick to Twitter myself, but I think we just had this conversation.
I think. I wanted to ask them on young adult, to move to the young adult literature topic, but I can't remember what my question was. Did you have any general observations on that? Or?
Well, I guess it's like what I find interesting, and I wonder if anyone else agrees, is that I really do feel like looking at this shift away from young adult into this new adult category, and publishing realizing that we can market it for teenagers, but you can sort of jump on the nostalgia for teenagehood and people will still want to read it, that it can still appeal to people in their 20s and 30s.
Here's a question that I'm not sure about, because I know some young adult book, or at least what I think are young adult, but then I see things like Hunger Games and whatnot, which don't quite match what my conception of what young adult was. Is there anything that actually goes into the writing when you're writing a young adult book? Like, you got to keep this at an 8th grade level. I mean, are those things you have to keep when young adult books are written? Are they written? Do you need to be careful of that, or keep them under a certain length?
So
it's kind of a length. It's definitely under 80,000 words.
Okay.
Or it should be. Like Twilight blew that out of the water. But generally, if you're sending a transcript, there's a word limit.
So if the book you have, if you flip it over and it says a grade level on it, that's not yet young adult.
Yeah.
By publisher standards, if it has a grade level on it, it's, I don't know what it's called, school age or mid-grade or something.
Mid-grade.
Yeah,
Mid-grade. It's a different market.
Like The Giver is technically mid-grade.
Right, but what happened is the books, when Harry Potter came out, I believe the first ones to come out did have a grade level on them. I'm not 100% sure. But after Harry Potter came out, it was so successful that it kind of broke. Some people started pushing the top level mid-grade stuff up. Because The Giver, some people, like Ender's Game is technically adult.
Well, now it's young adult.
Like Lindsay
No, it's
pointed
adult.
that out. Like always points that out. Like Ender's Game is now sold in young adult sections, and it's not a young adult book at all. It was not written, but why people think of it as a young adult is because the protagonist is young.
Yeah.
Then you get to like the second and third book, and he's like in his 30s, but he's like lived 1,000 years because of space travel. And he's known as like he's like more evil than Hitler, or he's considered more evil than Hitler because he destroyed,
Yeah. So one of the things that I found really interesting is, do you know the book The Night Circus?
Yeah.
The author of The Night Circus wrote that book as an adult book.
Yeah.
And she took it to a publisher. The publisher said, I'll take it, but you have to make it a young adult book. And she was like, but it's an adult book. It was like, I'm going to give you a few things to change, like hardly anything. Lower the age of the protagonists, add more romance. We're marketing it as young adult. And she was like,
Just a few things.
It actually wasn't much change because there was already some romance.
Yeah.
And
Is
it wasn't.
Lindsay's figures the kiss of death of her book, or what's been so hard to sell about it, is that there's no romance in it. Like,
OMG.
Yeah, so
she wrote it as a young adult. There's a female protagonist, teenage girl, action adventure, government kind of on your tail, but like no romance, and that's actually something. Because romance is definitely very popular.
Should Kickstarter it.
What are the actual young adult years? Like,
There are no years.
well,
But
when someone is a young adult, how
I
old are
think
they?
Traditionally, they were thinking high school, but that's so not the case anymore.
The highest grade level a book can be tagged at is like 8th or 9th grade. You never see books that say 10th grade and up.
Well, no, I'm saying what age group, not like book or whatever,
Oh.
like not targeted towards, but like when people are a certain, like what is the age group that young adult, like, it's like midlife, college age, like what are the young adult
with
years?
Things that teenagers identify the most with.
So it is young adult as a pseudonym for teen.
It's
Yeah.
really 13 to about 16 because they don't tend to deal with college. The
No, I've read I can't remember the names of them, but I've read a few that sort of dealt with early college and like were marketed as.
I mean, when I think
I don't know how I
college, I
could
think
ever
that
write
book
books
by-
with teens, because teens can't do anything. They can't drink, they can't drive, they can't buy firearms, they
can
can't
drive.
do squat. And they have poor judgment, they don't, like, why do people want to have teens as protagonists? They would be
Because of the
useless.
market.
And you're wondering why you can't sell to teens?
No, because teenagers
Have
or
spending money.
or because you do identify with those
They wanna
with
find
those
a
struggles, with the dealing with people don't like me. I can't do everything I want to. I'm really confused about all these feelings I have. There's absolutely a reason why we as 20 and 30-year-olds can read a young adult, what is considered a young adult novel that deals with those issues and still identify with that. Who doesn't had a quarter life crisis in this room? Everyone I know has. We all went through that phase of like, I'm out of college and I have huge student debts and I can't get a nice relationship and I'm still living with my parents and life is terrible and I need to identify with a character who knows what I'm talking about. Young adult.
The also one thing is when I was reading like Harry Potter, for example, I would always picture him as college age, and whenever something would yank me back into that he's high school, I'd be like, whoa, what's going on here? He's acting like a college student, but he's not.
But also, the strange thing, no, here's the thing though. What makes it feel like a college, because I went to a boarding school, like in high school. I wasn't a boarder, but there were
Yeah, I
kids there
know
who
the
boarded.
thing.
It does feel like college when you're there. When I went to college, it didn't feel any different because when you're in that environment, and you got to figure like the British schooling system
Yeah.
traditionally has been you send your kids off when they're 10 to boarding school if you have like money, or even that's like the tradition.
Yeah.
So they
That's
have
not the best example, but I know there are other books like that where you have the teenage
so
protagonists.
I think more like for us as Americans reading that, we're like, he's living in the dorm all the time, and like, even those with parents don't like rarely see them. They get care packages. You're like, oh, that's college. Like,
I think my favorite thing about that is how many times I've seen people say, the house system is such a brilliant addition. And like the idea of, no, she didn't invent that. That is how school works in England.
yeah.
And Yale and
Well,
boarding schools.
I
here.
know, but like the idea of, the people were so impressed with the idea of the sort, and I was like, guys, that's just how, she didn't invent that.
Yeah.
She lives in England, and she just was like,
People-
I'm gonna write a school, and it's gonna have the things a school has.
Yeah.
And people were just, yeah.
By the way, has anyone
Have
been
you
to?
ever been to a British school?
Has anyone else here been to Princeton? Maybe in the wintertime, in the Christmas era?
Yeah.
Because it's exactly like Hogwarts. It's creepy, so creepy.
Well, I visited Kenyon College when I was looking. Kenyon was the third choice for Hogwarts. Out of all of the places all over the world, Kenyon was the third choice. The reason I didn't go to Kenyon, to miss class at Kenyon, you need a doctor's note. I was like, goodbye, we can end this tour now. Let's go.
Yeah.
But I was like, why did you do that in college? What?
Anyway, yeah. So yeah, I think it'd be interesting to see how young adult continues to grow because it's still considered young adult, but that is not the audience although like there's still a huge teen audience in it. And actually, like Lindsay had this big shock. Like, I live near like the only 2 malls in Queens, and she was there picking some stuff up, and there were all these teenagers.
Was it
and
Teen
like,
Riot?
they were just there hanging out. And first off, she was like, teenagers still do that in the age of Facebook. They like actually hang out at the mall. Yeah. So, and then she heard they were all talking about how excited they were about Divergent, and she was like, and she even asked one like, did you read Divergent? And they were like, oh yeah, it was great. And she's like. So actually, for the next series, we kind of want to go to the mall and like hunt out some teenagers and ask them how they feel about literature and stuff nowadays.
Oh, that was a brilliant idea.
Yeah, because like I'm 29, she's 30. We just realized we're old. We couldn't compare to that, like, and yeah, it might still be marketed towards young adult, but we're reading this stuff, and we're not just reading it because of the series, like on our own, because of our connection with the publishing industry and because of our own book ideas. Like, it kind of it's one of those things where you should read what you're writing. So if you're writing young adult or you're writing something that could be marketed as young adult, you should know what is being sold as young adult. So yeah.
Were there any were there any surprises in writing it that you didn't? Because you knew Twilight, you knew the genre you were going into, but were there any when you actually got down to it, it's like surprises of any sort, like, wow, this scene is actually harder to work out than we thought, or was it kind of just like really by the book, easy to do?
No, I think we definitely came up with. I mean, there was this one point where I just got so sick of writing it because I hated Andy so much, the main character. She was such a snotty, spoiled little brat, and we purposely made the decision that when we wrote her, everyone else would be incredibly reasonable, like all the other humans. Like, her parents would be like the kind of parents you want. Like, her best friend would be like exactly what you wanted. Like, all right, like Vic gets a little, like, he's a little, like, one-itis, like, guy, like, he's too much in love with her, and, like, nice guy a little bit, but, like, everyone else generally is, like, completely decent people, and, like, whenever she acts terrible towards them, you hate her for it, because they are reasonable. Like, spoilers, there's a scene in the book where her and Riley run off to New York City to go fetch an item for Uncle Neil, or Neil Narholtet. And it's like they really need to go get this item, but then they spend the whole weekend there, like whirlwind, like romance thing. And then she comes back, and of course her parents have called the cops because she didn't bother to call them about it or anything. So they're in a panic. They ground her, and they're the ones who ruined her life. So yeah, I just writing that character. There came a point where I was like, guys, I really hate her. Like. I don't like her, no sir, I don't like her at all. But I love everyone else.
A lot of you just did too well then.
Yeah, a little too on the nose. Yeah. That was one big surprise. I think the biggest surprise of this entire process was more post, when people started reading it, and we kept getting comments from people who follow the series like, this is so well written, I wasn't expecting that, And we were like, and I mean, it went through the editing comb, maybe, like, Lisa was the main editor, and we maybe went through it about 4 or 5 times once we had sort of modernized it all and made it sound like it was coming from one person, because, we had the timetable and we were trying to get it out, and so we definitely tried to edit it as best we could in the time we had. And every once in a while we notice a mistake or two, like little things. But generally people seem to feel like it was, like, it's definitely better written than 50 Shades of Grey, they've said. So that's good. Although I gotta say, like, when you compare the writing of Twilight to 50 Shades of Grey, like, I almost feel bad for everything I said about how terrible Twilight was, because 50 Shades of Grey is awfully written. Like, not even talking about, like, the awful erotic and the terrible, like, abusive relationship that they have, like where it's painted as romantic and like really passionate. No, it's just straight up abuse. Like, Twilight is actually well written. It's like its English is good. You know, it may take like 3/4 of the book to finally get to like action in the plot, but at least it's not like a travesty against the English language. So I apologize to Stephanie Meyer for ever saying it was poorly written. It wasn't.
I felt the same way after, it's funny because I felt the same way after Twilight came out about everything I'd said about Harry Potter. It's like I want to write a personal note of apology to all Harry Potter fans and J.K. Rowling because, wow, I don't know. Then 50 Shades of Grey came out and I was like, oh wow, just keeps going down.
You know, I read the first one because we started this project and we were calling it 50 Shades of Green. And one of the first questions we asked the audience was, well, do we want it to be young adult or do we want to do this like erotica thing? We kind of pushed for the young adult though, because the thing about erotica, while it can be hilarious, it's just so annoying to write. Like, sex is kind of boring, like when in a book. Like, I don't know. I know people who can really write it well, but like we just realized we'd have to like write all those scenes, and we were just like, no, let's do the young adult like will they won't they have sex because like he'll drive her mad or something, you know. But no sex until they get married or something, because that's what happens in Twilight.
Is the young adult book market one of those? Is that like actually growing, or is it just sort of the thing that is shrinking?
I'd say that's the one that's growing the fastest, honestly.
There's actually been a slight bounce back in the whole publishing market.
What's suffering though is like when they flood the market and then like right now do not even attempt to shelve a dystopia. It is done. There is a nail in that coffin of dystopia in the book market.
It'll rise again in about 15.
Yeah, these things come in cycles.
Actually, you can still sell an adult dystopia.
Is there an exhaustive list of the things that get popular? I mean, has anyone done that? Like dystopia, vampire, you know, like there are 10 things and they come in this cycle.
They don't, because they don't. Nobody.
I know pirates were a thing like around 2008. I feel.
I mean,
You'll
there were a lot of
occasionally
pirate
get a
books.
werewolf thing.
What's that?
werewolves.
You'll occasionally get a werewolf thing.
Werewolves came with the vampire supernatural romance thing.
Yeah.
No.
I
No, there
think
was a
robots are
there
due
was
for
a
a
werewolf. There for pirates, there was kind of a werewolf thing that was happening. that
I think
know.
robots are due for a comeback.
Robots are due.
Robots?
Well, no, they are because like there's been
There's been steampunk, but
yeah.
like true cyberpunk is due for a comeback.
Yeah.
But it's hard. It's hard because
I
we
mean,
live
but the
it.
thing is, yeah, but the thing is, like, those books are being published and are present, but they haven't had the Twilight of them yet, you know? Like, they need that one novel that, like, then everyone tries to.
What creates a Twilight? Is it just one of those random like chance events,
Yes.
or I mean, I know that you can't go and just manufacture a hit like that, but is it one of those things of here's this brilliant person who does, or okay, here's a person with some degree of talent in an area and works really, really hard and gets their project through. I mean, you know, say what you will about J.K. Rowling, she does have some degree, you know, she does have talents in various writing areas, and her book, you know, really hit the right thing. I don't think that, you know, you can't say like this is a crap book and they only got lucky. I would never say that about that series. And even Twilight, I think, had you can't just say this is crap and it only got lucky.
I mean, to be fair,
I think, I think why Twilight was such a success was because Bella was such a blank slate that, in fact, for a while in our book, we discussed naming her Blanc Slate, or Blanche Slate, you know. But yeah, but we ended up going with Andromeda Slate, but I got Slate. So, where was my thought? The thing about Twilight, I think, was that it had a strong women's market, and people keep forgetting that women are 50%, 52% of world population. You should be marketing things that appeal to us, and what appeals to us, like look at like what's popular in fan fiction, like it's the 10,000 or the 100,000 word fanfics where it's just like two characters you love, like will they, won't they, building their relationship together, getting coffee, like going on dates, and then maybe something happens. Those things are so, I read that stuff. I don't even know why I read that stuff, but I know I read it because I do want to see these two characters interact, and I want to see how they like go about their day and fall in love and shit. Like, and if plot happens, well, okay, yeah, that plot should happen. I understand plot should happen, but sometimes you just really want just two people building towards something, and that slow, awful burn of like thousands and thousands of words. We know people read this in fan fiction, and Twilight was that. Twilight was that 3/4 of the book just Bella and Edward learning about each other, and like their attraction growing, or her attraction towards him growing, and him not like fearing she was a danger to her. Also, Bella is a blank slate. Like, if you read, you can easily put yourself in her shoes because she has no distinguishing anything. Her flaw is that she's clumsy. That's not a flaw. That's not a human flaw at all. That's just, you're clumsy. Like, she likes reading books. Oh, I like reading books. Who the hell doesn't like reading books?
Who the hell doesn't like reading books while they're reading a book, too?
Yeah, she's just like me, and I can have this beautiful romance with this terrible person. And yeah.
I think, in a way, because I was that snotty kid who constantly was comparing Harry Potter to Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter did the same thing on a different type of fan fiction.
Well, Harry Potter,
it is, in a sense, that high school AU you love.
You're a wizard, Harry, it's a chosen one.
Yeah, it's a chosen one thing, but it's also the high school AU. It's also a bunch of characters doing mundane things, but adventure happens, but mundane things, and you get to see them at Christmas, and you get to see them at Halloween, you get to see them. So I think.
Oh, and that's what's fascinating to me on Harry Potter is because it does have that shift, though. Like, when I think about the things I read that were mid-grade level, like, I mean, think of the series, like Redwall, like the Boxcar Kids even, Babysitter's Club. All those books are just the same exact thing with slight variations. It's comforting to read them because they're all the same story with slight variations. So Harry Potter kind of started with that, where it was like, yeah, this is a school year and this is the one big adventure, but all the things in between are just coming home, and that's what it feels like. And that's what I think. But then you start seeing that shift as the books went from a younger audience and grew with its audience, and then got kind of really adult almost. And then in the last book, you're not even at Hogwarts anymore because things have gone down so bad that oh yeah, you know how that last year there were gonna be owls and stuff? Well, to hell with that, and all that stuff.
I think there's also, and I don't know, one thing I've noticed a lot in the young adult books now, as opposed to like the mid-grade ones I grew up with, is world building, which I think is another nod to kind of the fan fiction tradition they grew out of. Because I'm supposed to look this up. There's some scholar I read on fan studies used to say that there's a part of dissatisfaction with what you have that is necessary for fan work. If you're completely satisfied, you don't have the same burning desire to create the fan works. And I think, there's, after you read like The Giver, I feel like I didn't have the same burning desire.
Yeah.
But Twilight like lays out this whole like vampire werewolf race with these powers, and then there's like, and this is the story of two of them.
Yeah.
And you're like,
no, like one of my biggest things I still feel is like, we just go back to Carlisle. Can we just please go back to Carlisle? I don't care about Edward and Bella. Carlisle is interesting. And he's a goody two-shoes. Like, he's like a little Boy Scout, and he shouldn't be interesting, but he is.
And Harry Potter did the same thing.
Yeah.
It's like, there is a secret wizarding world. Let's work on a little corner of it at one point in history.
Yeah. Well, I mean, here's the thing, though. Like, when you write a story, you can only, you can build the world, but you can only focus on one thing.
No, I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but I do think the big world, one story, kind of had something to do with why Harry Potter and Twilight were so popular, and other things didn't quite have the same energy. Like the Peter Jackson, the Olympians, we saw all of it.
Mm-hmm.
This is Camp Half-Blood. This is where all of them live. You have met them.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
I don't know some of the others that came out. The Golden Compass took us through the entirety of the world.
Yeah.
Once you read the Golden Compass series, you knew what happened, and that was it.
Well, that was so infuriating also about 50 Shades of Grey, because it's not in a fantasy world, it's in our world. And she was wrong. She didn't understand how our world works. And that's infuriating. It's like there's this part in later books where it's like she has this like stalker guy who's decided to like destroy her because like he's been destroyed because he wanted to rape her. So like Christian Grey destroyed her. But the thing is, it's like Christian never wants to involve the cops at all, and he just has the security guys do it. I'm like, that's a leak.
I think that's a common trope, though.
It's
Never call the police.
I know, but like it's ridiculous. Like it's
Here at Hopkins, you call the Hop. You don't call Baltimore police. You call the Hop cops, even in the
world is
neighborhood.
not. But also like things like she gets a job, and like the thing is like she's constantly late to the job. She never does any fucking work because she's always like getting lunch with Christian and stuff. And like everyone still really loves her though. Like she's such a good editor, head of this entire publishing company, and she's 23 in the book or something. Like just graduated college, and like she's already like she's pretty much like been given this position because Christian bought it out, but everyone loves her. Everyone loves her. There's like she's either so delusional she doesn't realize that, you know, she's terrible at her job, and like the only reason no one says anything is because, you know, your husband owns the company, or she's delusional. It's yeah. Yeah.
But I think I think it kind of grew out of like in the 90s, and I'm more familiar with the television culture. But you had Xena, Buffy, and X-Files all come out, and fan fiction of those was very world focused.
Yeah.
And I think that might have affected the way the young adult boom afterwards. All of these things had worlds, some of them better than others. I have no explanation for 50 Shades other than people were like, ooh, I can read erotica in public now?
Yeah. As a side note, can I just say like how well Xena has held up in a cracky way, like upon rewatching it. Xena is such a it's a strangely solid show, even though it's like it knows it's ridiculous and it doesn't care.
I think all three of those shows held up really well.
What's
Yeah.
the third one?
X-Files.
Oh, X-Files. Sorry.
Like, I've been rewatching episodes of all of them, and I'm just
Quick question. So it was really interesting the way you did the crowdsourcing. It was very engaged with your fans because what you were doing. Do you feel that I mean, this traditional model of like writing where someone goes and writes and then they engage after the fact that they've written. Do you feel that that getting more fan engagement during the writing process, before the writing process, is that going to be like that's going to result in crappy novels, or
No,
maybe not? I don't know.
I don't think it's a good idea for a novel you really care about. Like, not that I don't care about Awoken, but like its premise is that it is a parody of something we all know. So what do we all know about this thing? And that's really because a lot of the tweets, like when this idea first came to head on Twitter, when Zeta made a joke about like, I want a piece of the Twilight pie, it's gonna be Twilight with sexy aliens, go. And people just grabbed it like a dog in a bone, and they were just like, everyone throwing these really great ideas that were just, it was absolutely spot on making fun of what happens in Twilight. And like how to and I think that's why the crowdsourcing works, because we're here for fun and we all know how this thing works. Like, so it worked on that level. But if you're trying to write something, you don't want to have too many cooks, because for example, like if you send out a short story to people, like you can end up with like 5 different opinions about what works, what doesn't, and then it's up to you to figure out like, what do I keep, who do I just sort of not pay attention to, and who do I actually pay attention to. And I think when you're like, if you're I feel like you'd get a little too swamped. Like, you should, if you're writing something, it should really be your own work.
And maybe like a smaller group of people, and not like, hey,
Like
here's
after like the first draft, or like if you're having a problem with the first draft, like, or have a plot issue, then like pull someone you trust aside and be like, hey, like what should I do? Like I'm stuck. Like they're at this one point. I don't know how to move this action forward. Like let's spitball some ideas.
But doing that like on Twitter probably is not going to be. That's not the future of writing. This hyper fan connected thing.
I don't really think so. I think because to me, like writing is still such a highly personal thing, you know. Even blog writing, you know, you write the blog and you throw it out there to see what people think of it, but you don't ask for their opinion before you write, you know. I think we're definitely going to see more, like right now in the publishing industry, you know, it used to be like they'd like your book, they'd pick it up, and then their marketing team would work on getting word out there. You are your own marketing team now in the age of social media, and in a way, like that gives you more power. But it also, if you're not that kind of person who feels very comfortable with having a public face like that, and all you wanted was just to write your book and have people like it, people can find that very difficult. So it's trying to find that sweet spot of interacting with people who could become your fans, or why they should read your stuff, or why you're interested in engaging, and still keeping a private side to yourself. One of the big rules of Shea Apocalypse is don't cause shit on Twitter. Like if something's terrible happened in your life, or like someone's pissed you off, just don't put it on Twitter. Like just don't do it. Don't cause fights.
I mean, what do you think? So you're reading a lot of young adults books as kind of like for your next project, and I have two questions related to that. One is kind of general, and related to what you just said. Sorry. The culture of serialization, because you mentioned blog posts. I think we'll see a lot more of that, like short segments, because you mentioned our attention span. But everything's coming out in 3s and 4s and 5s. Like you don't get a book deal. You get
what's
things have always been. I mean, go to any fantasy section and go back to 70s, 80s. It's always trilogies.
But what's hilarious or really fascinating to me is that if you try to sell your book, like they don't want books that are the first in a series. You know, you want to tell them, oh, it's a standalone with series potential.
Yes.
But you do not admit at all that you have like, oh, I definitely have like 2 other books on the back burner ready to go.
Let's
like,
already have them done.
They don't want, I mean, they would love if the first one took off like fire and like it became the next Twilight, but they don't want that risk. They want a story that's complete.
And the other question, I have a hard time with this in trying to get through the Hunger Games books. The first person craze that's going on.
Yeah, it's really frustrating.
Personally, I find first person, when done fantastically, can be a very compelling point of view.
But it has some serious limitations.
Doesn't have really problems like if the person isn't there.
Yeah.
And they have to like
well,
get
I mean,
that.
that's what happens in Hunger Games, where you get while you were asleep, like explanation.
The thing is, on the second page, Katniss goes, "I tied my long brown hair up in a braid." The first person,
like that.
the first person narrative is an inner thought monologue. I mean, I've read amazing first person. It can do well.
Yeah.
But I've never found it in a young adult book.
And that's young. It's so popular in young adult because it very quickly puts you in the character's mind, which can be appealing, but it also really limits you in regards to understanding or even hinting at other characters' motivations or just what's happening outside of your eyes or your grasp.
For me, the most problematic is just you get characters thinking things nobody thinks.
Yeah.
Like, this is the town where I live.
That's actually like a fun thing, like a video, like a short video of you like doing a first person narration,
Yeah.
those book style, just to, like in real life,
Yeah, actually that would be a hilarious video if you went around with the camera and like acted like this was any normal day, and you're like, "Hi, this is my friend. Why are you filming this? What are you saying?"
I walk down the street towards the bakery where I like to get my bread. It is the best bread in the town. It's getting a little pricey though.
I watch that.
A day in the life of a. And I just, it's very hard because I like want to keep up on the crazes. I want to read all the dystopia stuff. trying to get through the adult dystopias is just as hard because of no darkness.
I actually just read a book where it's called The Feed, or the first one's called Feed, or it's a trilogy. It's what's the trilogy called? It's pretty much a zombie apocalypse, but where society doesn't collapse, and bloggers have sort of become this like really important for just connecting to people. You know, and like, you know, there's still public transport, there's still car, there's still gas, there's still all that stuff. There's just a whole huge ton of precautions that are taken into account. And it's these two siblings that are your main characters, and it's from her perspective. And there's this really sudden tonal, like, or character shift, because it goes from her to the brother, and then the rest of the books are from the brother's perspective. And I thought it was pretty well done, but like, yeah, it's very jarring. I mean, it's like, to be fair, it's supposed to be jarring. No spoiler, but yeah, I just find first person way too limiting. Mm-hmm. Also, a thing I find really limiting, the lack of a singular non-gendered pronoun in our language. I really keep trying to make they work.
With it or there.
They.
I've made they and there work pretty well.
They works if it's only one character who's non-gendered. If you try like more than, if you try two or more characters that are non-gendered and using they, it gets so confusing so fast. Like Lindsay and I have struggled with this.
I mean,
You just
because
describe
her
it.
story has aliens.
The
and,
aliens,
like,
the
she doesn't want to
species
gender
name.
the aliens because they're not human, you know. But
You,
I mean,
use descriptions like their species name,
Yeah.
I mean,
whatchamacallits for them.
the workaround I've used, and I'm not original, is you can have the aliens choose a pronoun.
Mhm.
Just be like, these are inadequate. This one is better.
Yeah.
I have combined your pronouns. Use
Yeah.
this.
But
And
yeah,
you can, but I don't know.
it's
I've found
Yeah,
ways
and
to write around
for
it.
writing, because there are just times where it's like I could really use a singular they right now, or a singular non-gendered pronoun, and I hate that the default
Because
is
they is sport.
yeah,
The problem I find with they is in spoken speech, it works great.
yeah.
When you just say, yeah, I went to see them the other day, people just totally doesn't matter. But when it's written, it jars you a lot more. I think a lot of people are like, oh, just use they. But when they're reading it out, see, I just did it, and they're reading it out, they're like, they, but, huh?
Yeah.
Which, on the other hand, I think the alternative pronouns that you see all over Tumblr work a lot better written than spoken.
I actually read a really fascinating, or I mean, it was a pretty solid little book, called Ancillary Justice, and it's about this. So ships in this universe, or the spaceships in this universe, have consciousness, and they are given ancillaries who are pretty much people captured in the wars and who are wiped clean and pretty much become hooked up to and become like the additional arms and the sights and senses of the ship. So they can be sent, they're servants for the captains, all this stuff. And they're all connected to the over higher intelligence of the ship. The ship goes down and only one survives. So it's still the ship, but it's lost all of its ability, like everything it was once able to do. What I found really interesting about this book was that in their world, how they set it up was that the ship actually gets very confused as it's traveling around the galaxy, because in the ship's culture, that for the people they worked for, the only pronoun used is she. Like, gender is not distinguished, and she is this like non-gendered thing. So I could see what the author was trying to do, but then it just wasn't satisfying to read, because when I see a character and it's labeled as she, I instantly think woman. Like, and that's just our own limitations in our language and stuff. Like, but then they'd go, like, the ship would run into other cultures and, like, making note of, like, oh yes, in this culture, like, those features mean female and I have to use that as that, and like, but I have to use this male pronoun for people who look like that. And this is really weird and confusing, and I don't know why people do it, you know. So I mean, I could see what the author was trying to do. I could see, but it's a struggle. It's like trying to write that non-gender.
We could probably, any last questions here, or is we getting close to 7 and the break time? Anyone?
I'll see you at dinner.
Yes.
Anyway, well, thank you very much.
Yeah. So hope it was a good panel discussion.
It was.
Hope you enjoyed it.